I think looking at the Irish model, I think it's an excellent model. One of the key stages was the weapons amnesty, where the weapons were all taken away. And I think that that is effectively what the stage we're in at the moment, which is destroying the tunnels and taking away and destroying the weapons and the missiles. And once those are destroyed, we'll be in a very good position to rebuild from scratch, educational institutions that are not built on top of terror tunnels, and hospitals that are not built on top of Hamas central headquarters, but actually are there for the benefit of the patients, for the benefit of the school children who won't be abused by bringing them into war training at the age of 4. In Hamas armies. So I think that there will be a process of denazification, just as took place in Vienna and in Berlin after the war. But I think that this could be a much quicker process.
Leo, may I call you Leo? As I said in the introduction, you lost your wife and 2 daughters in this horrific Hamas terror attack. So the events of October the 7th must have represented a pretty painful return for you to your own trauma.
Mariella, strangely, it was the opposite, because when the tragedy happened to my family after the 30 days of mourning, I said to my daughters and my son, I said, we're now entering phase 2 of our lives, 1 parent and 3 kids, not 2 parents and 5 kids. And it will be equally happy with all the memories of the previous life we had, but we're in a new world and we just have to, live in this new world. And by framing it like that we were entering a new world, it really helped all of us to sort of move forwards. And when this happened on the 7th of October, it absolutely felt that we were entering a third world, that this was a completely new world again. And it's taken us further away from where we were 7 months ago. So strangely, it's actually helped us in a way to move forwards.
Did what happened to you make you question your faith? Because it just must have seemed like some sort of bolt out of the blue that felt completely inexplicable. How could that happen? Why would that happen?
It's a strange thing, but actually, as Jews, we believe that God is bringing us closer to redemption, and that's His plan. And strangely, what happened on the 7th of October, despite being a terrible tragedy for everybody, and particularly for those who lost family members and those who still have hostages in Gaza, it very much feels that we're in a process that will lead us closer to peace as we go forwards. And please God, that will also help the world to get closer to peace.
Your family are settlers. You moved to Israel, I think, on the behest of your wife, or at least certainly fueled by her to a great extent. And of course, settlers get, if anything, the worst press, as it were. But that's not been your experience of living in Israel, has it?
On the contrary, Mariella, you're right. We live as close as you can to Palestinians. Our neighboring towns are Palestinian. The people that we mix with in the supermarket are Palestinians. The people who come into our homes every day and work in our homes are Palestinians. So we have a much closer relationship and actually a greater understanding of their situation than those people who live further away, say in Tel Aviv or in Haifa. So as we've discovered in this current situation, what people thought was true is actually the opposite to the truth. And the actual truth is completely different to the perception that people had.
So how would you, describe the truth? Is there a truth in this current situation? One of the things I was really struck by in reading about you was the way you credited your Palestinian neighbours with an enormous outpouring of empathy and sympathy in the aftermath of your horror.
Right. No, certainly. I had WhatsApp messages. I can't tell you how emotional they were. People came to my shiva, the 7 days of mourning, but they had to come in secret, sat in the back room, and I appreciated every show of emotion and show of affection from them. But I think that, I believe, and most of my neighbours and friends believe, in freeing Palestine from Hamas. And I said this before, and when I speak privately with my Palestinian friends, they do not like being under the Palestinian Authority as it is in the West Bank. The Gazans don't like being under Hamas. They can't say it, as we can see that these are regimes that have no human rights. and there's no freedom of religion. There's not one synagogue in Gaza. There's not one synagogue in Ramallah. But there are mosques and churches, obviously, in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. So, again, the perception that there's apartheid in Israel is completely wrong. But actually, there is apartheid in Gaza and in the West Bank. So,
but how do you feel about those Palestinian neighbours who you clearly hold dear, bearing the brunt in the aftermath of that Hamas attack? Because that must be incredibly upsetting. You know, we're looking at this hospital in Gaza at the moment with no power and babies dying, innocent babies just born into the world dying because of a conflict that, you know, a lot of Palestinians don't support Hamas, as you've just pointed out.
It's terribly painful for everyone in Israel to see this. And I think that every Palestinian civilian who is killed by Hamas, because the action of war that took place on the 7th of October led to the obvious result. And they basically are killing Gazan children. Every moment they keep Israeli hostages underground or wherever they're keeping them and not returning them, they're prolonging this war and killing their own citizens. And of course, the question is, they built all these underground tunnels for the terrorists. Where are their bomb shelters and facilities for their civilians? There aren't any.
But the fact is, they are being killed by Israeli soldiers. You know, that's who's doing the killing. I mean, absolutely, I can see in a bigger picture, kind of conceptual way. Yes, you could argue that, but they're being killed by Israeli soldiers. And I suppose the thing that is very difficult from outside of the situation, which obviously someone like me is what the future plan is. And I was really interested in reading your thoughts about that in your role as Special Envoy for Social Initiatives, because it sounded, I mean, there are only two solutions, aren't there? There's a two-state solution or there's integration. Mm-hmm. Other than that, is there a third way? Because you sounded like quite an integrationalist, dare I say.
I think there's actually a compromise solution, and I say this not in my role as the envoy, because obviously I have no inside information and decisions are made way beyond my head, but a situation where the Gazans and indeed the Palestinian Authority could be broken up into smaller chunks of maybe cities of 200,000 people surrounded by Israel's sovereign territory would create a much safer situation for Israel. Each individual city, let's say, could have a democratic election of a local government, its own police force perhaps. And then the carrot would be that those that educate their kids not to hate and to kill as they have been, but actually to learn in the way that Israeli Arabs are educated in Israel, could have the opportunity to work all over Israel with a free work permit and travel permit across the whole of Israel. So they'd effectively get from the river to the sea, that would be a dream situation. That could be one state with 20 disparate cities, but actually, all together with an umbrella, one state, one flag, one president rotating from the 20 leaders, and one seat on the United Nations. So I think that there is hope. I recently went to Vienna in my role, and I was surprised to see that the Jewish community in Vienna is blooming, is blossoming, and is tremendously well supported by the government and by the people of Vienna and Austria. And to bear in mind that 80 years ago they wiped out a third of the population under the Nazi government, and now Jews are living in perfect harmony with their neighbours and tremendous love. I think there is hope. I don't know how long it will take, but we'll certainly get to that point.
You suffered a huge trauma yourself. And at the moment, alongside those families of the hostages and those who lost people on October the 7th, the Palestinians are suffering huge trauma. Do you worry that actually what's being created without a future plan, that what's being created is another radicalised generation? I mean, the only hope, I was brought up in Ireland, it never seemed possible that Catholics and Protestants would live together in harmony and in peace, and yet it's been achieved. I lived, as you will have, through South Africa and apartheid and seen that be brought to an end. So do you feel that is a possibility too with Israel and Palestine? And don't you worry about the impact of what's happening now, because it will it will carry on.
So I think looking at the Irish model, I think it's an excellent model. One of the key stages was the weapons amnesty, where the weapons were all taken away. And I think that is effectively what the stage we're in at the moment, which is destroying the tunnels and take away and destroying the weapons and the missiles. And once those are destroyed, we'll be in a very good position to rebuild from scratch, educational institutions that are not built on top of terror tunnels, and hospitals that are not built on top of Hamas central headquarters, but actually are there for the benefit of the patients, for the benefit of the school children who won't be abused by bringing them into war training at the age of 4. In Hamas armies. So I think that there will be a process of denazification, just as took place in Vienna and in Berlin after the war. But I think that this could be a much quicker process, and we pray that we can be working closely together with our Palestinian neighbours very soon. And of course, the Israeli economy to a certain extent depends on that, because hundreds of thousands of Palestinians work in Israel every day, and that's on pause at the moment. And the question is, how long can the Israeli economy sustain that? So it's in everybody's interest that we solve this, and I'm sure that will be done as quickly as humanly possible.
Just finally, what do you feel about those calling for a ceasefire?
I've heard the expression that anti-ceasefire is pro-genocide. Unfortunately, the opposite is true, that pro-ceasefire is pro-genocide, because any genocide that's actually taken place in the last 18 years in the region was on the 7th of October, when Hamas terrorists came in and created a genocide against the Jewish people. Until that point, Israel has not been into Gaza. They've had complete freedom of operation. But
they haven't had freedom of... they've been trapped in Gaza for 16 years. So, you can imagine that would probably build some degree of resentment.
Right. First of all, it's not true. A lot of them have worked in Israel. In fact, what happened in Be'eri, which is the border town, and Kfar Aza and the other border towns, was that the terrorists knew exactly which houses to hit, because workers who had been working daily in those communities and friendly with these left-wing, Palestinian-friendly Israelis, had told the terrorists exactly which houses to hit. And they have absolute evidence of that. For example, one family never spent Shabbat, Saturday, in their house, because they always would travel. So that house was ring-fenced as don't bother going to that house. Now, only somebody who actually was a regular worker in the town would know that particular house. As it happened, that family was in the house. One exception, they happened to be in the house that day, and they heard the terrorists in the house next door, and the terrorists going to the house the other side, and they couldn't understand why they'd been left alone. It was because of that.
Yep. Just finally, as I said at the beginning, your wife was very keen that you moved to Israel. She wanted to bring up your children there. She felt it was the place to be. You're here now addressing anti-Semitism that's occurring in the UK. Do you ever regret having moved to Israel because of what happened?
Not at all. I think, I guess I'm a man of faith, and I think that, if God has a plan, he'll carry it out whichever way, you want. You can't avoid it. So you just live your life. I think the moment you start worrying about death, or worrying, looking back in the past and regretting, you're sacrificing your own life. You're sacrificing your happiness. So you have to look forwards, and what happens for a reason. We don't understand it, but we can be confident that the plan will lead to something better in the future.
Has it made it very difficult for you to live alongside Palestinians whose representatives are responsible for what happened to your family?
I think you put your finger on it. I have no problem confronting my Palestinian friends, who are very sympathetic all the time, and they blame their representatives. I think I blame their representatives, and we agree on that completely. In fact, when this happened, I was surrounded in my local supermarket by some Palestinians that I've known for many years, and they said to me very quietly, because they didn't want to be heard, those people were not human beings. They don't believe in Allah. And I think that was very much a sentiment. And I think it's a sentiment in Gaza and in the West Bank of the people who perpetrated October the 7th. So everybody should be happy when Hamas is eliminated, that the Palestinian people will be able to live once more with a chance of peace and democracy and freedom, which they've not experienced because they've always been led by totalitarian regimes without any human rights.
Indeed, but what a high price everybody's paying at this moment in time.
Absolutely.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Leo Dee. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.